All right, the inaugural episode. We are here with the Analyst. The Analyst is the underground crypto expert that I'm a member of his Patreon. And I'll start off with this. I've been on the Analyst Patreon. I can tell you for certain that he had a list of AI crypto tokens, coins to look out for. And what just happened in this last month, they were all booming. And like I'm not talking about 30% because all of crypto is up, right? We saw specifically, well, I'm not even going to name this one token, but there were tokens that literally went up over 1,000% in a month. So when you think of these gains, they're real. This is not something that people just talk about. It really does happen, but you have to know what you're talking about. And so Andrew's joining us today. Andrew is the Analyst, and I know you put in the hours and hours of research. Can you talk about like what goes into when you're looking at projects? Like how do you unearth some of these tokens?
Yeah, I got quite a few different methods. I would say first I look at partnerships. That's usually where I start. So I try to find assets that are partnered with Google, Amazon, Samsung, Sony. Uh, the list goes on. Those tier companies, um, and then so I start with that. Once I find tokens that are partnered with the big dogs, then I look at the team. So who's behind them, who the CEOs are, who are the
Let, let's pause for a second because you are like your internet connection's cutting out for a second. Let's see if we can get this back. You're still frozen. We'll wait for a few seconds. And while Andrew's
successful. So then if the technology saw the narrative.
okay, there we go. You were frozen for a second. So I don't know if it's your internet connection or mine, but we're back.
Okay.
We caught a little bit of what you're saying, and you started off with that you're looking at the partnerships. You're looking at who's connected to who. But for everybody watching and listening, keep in mind that some of these big companies, they're just in every project because it's worth it for them to be in every project, right? Like it's kind of like when you look at these capital investors and they're just putting money in everything because if one of them goes up, the rewards far exceed the downside of betting on some of these projects that don't pan out. That's not to say your method doesn't work, but I know your method is more layered than that. But that's one way for people to get the intro is like, Andrew's looking at who is partnered with who. But I think the big point I want to address in this episode is this recession, right? Everybody's talking about a 2023 recession, and that's what is very interesting to me is people say it, we're all talking about it, everybody's looking at it, but I don't think anybody knows quite what that means. And I don't really, we never get any specificity. We're listening to the experts. I want to ask you, what does when I say 2023 recession, what does that mean for the economy and what does that mean for crypto?
Man, that's a good question. Well, I would say most likely if there's a recession, which it seems like there's going to be, then crypto is going to take a hit, you know? But that being said, there's still money to be made, right? Like AI just took off, many tokens did 10x, 15x, and we're still in the middle of a massive bear market. So even if there is a recession, there's going to be moments in time where certain sectors within cryptocurrency are going to boom because the technology is rolling out at a rapid rate. But that being said, I do think the wisest move is to expect a massive downturn and to keep some cash on the side to wait. And during that time, collecting the research, collecting the list of assets that you want to pile into when the time is right. But all the signs seem to be pointing towards a pretty epic recession.
So when you say a pretty epic recession, what is the marker for that? Like, what to you indicates that there's a recession? Because technically, right, we're already in a recession, but what is, I think everybody's looking for what, when they say recession, my speculation is they mean crash, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think they mean crash, and there's so many things going on. I mean, we have, obviously wars, we have medical situations, people getting sick for this reason or that reason. We have the currency was pretty much destroyed, right? They doubled the supply in 2 years, and they shut down the economy for a year and a half. And so those things have repercussions, and it just, there's where there's smoke, there's fire. And so there's a lot of smoke building up, but we haven't seen the real fire yet. So doesn't mean that one will come, but it just seems like one possibly will come. And so,
And I
yeah,
think
what do you?
I think one thing to look out for is the difference is not making a false equivalency, right? This is something to be very careful about, because we do it a lot. A recession or a depression, because I think we'll enter into depression. A recession would be the nice way to put it, and I think that's the way to that we're easing people into this idea that, hey, this is going to tank. But regardless, we've got this recession, but it doesn't necessarily mean because the overall economy pulls back that crypto does. Crypto could do something else. We just don't know. I agree with you. I do think crypto will come down significantly, but that's not a certainty, right? There's a non-zero chance that crypto could go up, because I mean, we'll talk about, like, I know you've talked about this before. What about when institutional money goes into crypto? What do you think will happen?
Yeah, I think that's a major point. So it seems like what I believe personally is I believe Bitcoin and the whole crypto market, regardless of whether we enter a recession or depression, will bottom out sometime this year. And that's for multiple reasons. But one of the biggest reasons is regulations, like you're talking about. So right now, all the biggest institutions in the world are on the sidelines, uh, waiting for the governments to give them that green light. And so all the institutions have publicly said they're waiting. They have all their ducks in a row. So when that moment comes, they're going to pile in, and really take that whole sector to the next level.
And I think that's the operative word, because I mean, we're right at, plus or minus $1 trillion market cap for crypto, which is, when you look at the grand scheme of things, very, very small on a global scale. Can you put it into context? Can you give us an idea of how small crypto is at this moment?
Yeah, I mean, if you had it's it's probably roughly what, 1%, less than 1% of the global GDP, much less than 1%. And if we just look at the World Economic Forum, they have said just a few months ago, they said that the market cap for crypto is going to be 10 trillion by 2025. And so that's only a 10x from here. And in my opinion, they're being conservative. So if they're telling you 10, it's probably going to be 20, 30, 40, because they rather undershoot it than overshoot it. And they talk about by 2030, basically everything's going to be on the blockchain. So however big the global GDP is, all of it's going to be tokenized and on the blockchain. So
And beyond
the upside is just crazy. So even if you are expecting a recession or a depression, to me, having no exposure right now is extremely risky. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I've lately, just watching this run up recently, and I should note Bitcoin's at about 21,000 right now. We're recording this on January 18th, but I've had such a fear of missing out while this run is happening right now. I'm in crypto. Some of them, I have some tokens that are going up fine, but the bulk of my money is static, and I'm remiss, right? Like I'm watching this run, and it is absolutely killing me, but I do think it will pull back. So I'm waiting. But as you're saying, sometimes, this is such a unique moment in time, and there's so many different dynamics that are colliding together, and we're trying to put them together. I do think, like you said, you want to have some exposure no matter what, because this is so unpredictable, right? This is not something that anybody is calling correctly. And we can look no further than some of these prognosticators in the crypto market that got completely wholesale exposed, because what were they calling for 100K and 300K? And it was like 100% going to happen. And then what happened? Like, we're down. I don't think anybody saw 16,000 in the horoscope. Can you talk more about the unpredictability aspect of it and how so many experts and influencers really don't know, even though, I think some of them really do try. I think some of them really do rely on good data, but there's so few people that actually have called the majority of this right.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're in uncharted territory, right? So we're at what they call the fourth industrial revolution. So the first industrial revolution was the steam engine, the second one was electricity, and the third one was the internet, right? So all three of those things changed humanity as a whole, the way we travel, communicate, do business, everything. And so they're putting blockchain at the center of the fourth industrial revolution. So, and there's never been an opportunity for the everyday person like ourselves to actually invest in it, right? You couldn't invest in electricity, the average person, or even the internet. All the companies were private at the small levels. And so there's an opportunity here that is pretty dramatic. And when there's a change such as blockchain and artificial intelligence in technology that's just accelerating exponentially, it's impossible to predict the timing of it all and how it's all going to roll out. And if you notice right now, ChatGPT rolled out, it went viral, basically the interface moment of artificial intelligence. And even though all the big guys are claiming recession, depression is coming, Microsoft just invested 10 billion into OpenAI. And I believe Microsoft also just laid off 10,000 people. So in one hand, they see the recession coming for the everyday person. And in the other hand, they see AI coming out as the beast that it is. And so I believe it's possible we could have a recession and this crazy world-changing technology could explode at the same time, but it's impossible to predict.
And that's because so many people are focused on the prices, understandably so, but there's no way to tell which way they're going, really. Even, I mean, I don't even think if we look on month span, right? Like, even if we're out of the weekly and the daily, it's so hard to tell in later 2023 what will be the case for prices. But we do know the general direction, right? And I think it's palpable that you can feel that energy, resources, everything, all of the momentum is headed into crypto. And like you said, this is game changing. Like, the fundamentals, the way we live, the value that's created, it will never be the same. And it's scaling at a rate that I don't think I can even fathom, because when it happens, it's going to happen, and it will just be there, right? And I think that's one thing that there's a lot of people right now that are just going about their daily lives and they don't realize the shift that's going on. Can you talk about that shift some more?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, most people have no idea. They have no idea, and they probably won't have an idea until it's quote unquote too late. And what I mean by too late is whether the investment opportunity has already skyrocketed or their job has gotten replaced by an AI, a drone, a smart car, a robot. Then there's going to be that moment where people will realize, but it'll be too late for them in that regard. And so from my research, part of this is speculation, part of it is right out of their mouth. The technocratic people who are building all of this stuff, they purposely hide it because for many reasons, right? One of them might be not to create a panic. You can't just roll out robots and say, hey, your job's gone. You got to do it in phases. So ChatGPT might be that first little appetizer towards what's coming, right? And so, like you said, I think it's just going to happen really fast, and it's going to blow some minds. And so, yeah, we have AR as well. I'd like to touch on AR if we get a chance, but
yeah, touch on it. Let's go.
Yeah, so we got Apple, Google, most notably Apple is saying they've been saying for years they're going to roll out their AR glasses. And so we don't know when they're actually going to roll it out, but once they do, I think from an investment standpoint or blockchain standpoint and AI standpoint, that to me, that's going to be as big as the computer or the smartphone, because now you're going to be able to overlay data on top of the real world, which is just, it's going to open up so many mind-blowing things. If you just sit there and think about it, it's going to be a big deal.
And you're 100% right. You have to look out for these subtle shifts that are happening with people, with who you're seeing, and the way they live their daily lives. If all of a sudden you start noticing an uptick in people wearing new high-tech interactive glasses, that's one of those cues. That is coming to a theater near all of us, right? We're going to see that fairly soon. And we've already seen Chat GPT roll out, and not a lot of people realize what it can do, and that people are already using it. And it's been in use, right? Like the articles we read, some of the videos we watch, they're already made with artificial intelligence, just nobody told you, right? So these things are happening, and like you said, they're going to roll them out over time, because if you even with the tech we have now, right? If they unveil that all in one fell swoop, nobody would even know how to react, because it would be so stark and so game changing. But that's happening, and the cool thing though is that, like you said, we can invest in this, right? Like most of the times there's no way to participate. All you have to do to participate is grab some tokens and you can be in the game. It doesn't, some of these projects aren't going to pan out, but you could be in the AI sector if you wanted to. It's quite easy to do. So I think most people, one, they don't know how, and before even that, they just don't even think about it.
Yeah, and you and me have talked about this before, but assets that we hold don't necessarily have to even be successful for us to reap some nice rewards. So for example, I saw the AI narrative building slowly in some of the places that I look before ChatGPT came out. And so I was investing in AI, preparing for just the narrative. So none of the assets I hold in particular, those technologies are not even being used on a mass scale at all. Nobody knows about them, but just the narrative of ChatGPT has made that whole sector rise. And so we're talking about AR. If we know AR is coming, and it's a little bit harder to predict, but once we see like the more clear signs it's about to happen, you can start just shifting in that direction before you even see anybody wearing them. And that's a good strategy that I like to use as well.
Because the narrative too, and that's all that happens, is once the narrative takes hold, it doesn't, some of these projects are just like any others. Just because they say AI doesn't mean they're not a scam, right? Or doesn't mean that their project is going to get fulfilled. A lot of these projects are failures, but what we've seen time and time again in crypto, and we're probably at one of the last phases of this, is just the narrative. People dump money in there, and it doesn't matter what token it is, as long as that token fits along the narrative. Most people haven't even looked at the project. They haven't even seen the team. They don't know if the team's actually doing anything. It's just a bunch of pictures on a website. It's a token in this industry, and it rises up. Of course, and ultimately the fundamentals will prevail. But I think what you're saying is that we've seen this happen so many times, where there is success even despite the fact that there's nothing really tangible with the project.
Well, I'm not necessarily that there doesn't have to be something there with the project, but before the AI narrative took off, nobody was even, for the most part, even looking at them. So once the narrative explodes, now people are looking at these projects and doing the research and finding, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was here the whole time, but we're just ahead of them. And sure, there's some projects that are BS that are going to explode just off the narrative, but the narrative will be that spark for the investigation into, okay, now it's time to research this. We're just beating everybody to the punch.
100% agree. I was pointing that out because I think so many people are unaware of, they're thinking like, I want to invest in crypto. Here's a narrative. I'm going to go. And just to put that caveat that a lot of they're not necessarily a lot, but there's definitely times where narrative is fit, but the project doesn't it doesn't even have to be a scam. It just may not work out, right?
Mm.
Let's talk about let's talk about actually altcoins versus versus looking into ETH and Bitcoin. So many people, they've heard of Bitcoin, less people have heard of ETH, and a lot of people want to just invest in those, but there's also the fact that mathematically it doesn't make sense when you just look at the alternative investments. If ETH and Bitcoin are running, a lot of altcoins are running much higher, especially when, for example, they fit that narrative, or they're just other tokens that have significant potential. Can you talk about the difference when you're thinking about if you contemplate Ether, Bitcoin, or some of these major layer ones that we see in the top, let's say 50 market cap, versus some of these alts that are lower market cap, but are lesser known and are lesser known?
Yeah. So what I like to say is, everyone's running their own race. And so there's different strategies that work for different people because they have different amounts of capital or different goals. Um, and so when I think about Bitcoin and Ethereum, you're talking about how they might go up less. The altcoins would, kind of be a leveraged version of Bitcoin, but the opposite is also true many of the times. And so kind of depends, if you're in a bull market or a bear market, how you're trying to play. And it also depends on what your goals are. So if someone has a lot of money and their goals are to hedge against, the scam fiat system long term, then Bitcoin is a great choice, right? If your goal is to preserve your wealth and maybe slightly grow it, and same goes for Ethereum. But if you're somebody who has $500, $1,000, or whatever a little amount is, to me it wouldn't make any sense to buy Bitcoin because you're not gonna do too much with that investment. So if your goal is to make a lot of money and you're willing to risk it, then you got to look a little deeper. And a lot of times you're not going to find these projects, and people are scared to even go below the top 50 because they think it's all a scam because that's what the narrative is. But that's where the research comes in. Then you'll find companies that are 1,000 times less valued than Bitcoin, but when you research it, you find out that it might have more of a use case than Bitcoin. So
And the research is important, and it's never ending because there are so many tokens out there. I don't even know how many are listed now. Are we at about 5,000?
last time I checked, it was around 20,000.
20,000. Okay, it's exploded recently. So yeah, it just keeps going up and up, and there's no way to research every one. I think you just have to decide where you're going to look and start getting in there.
Yeah, and that being said, anybody can create a token, right? So you and me right now, within probably 2 hours, we could mint our own tokens, and that would add to the 20,000. So of that 20,000, a large chunk is just Joe Schmo in his basement, just creating a little whatever token for whatever reason. But if we narrow it down to partnerships with Google, Sony, Samsung, we might get that down to about 1,000 to 2,000, which is still a lot, right? Not just those two companies in particular, but big companies. And then so you can filter out from there. Yeah.
There is so much emotion in this space. And I talked about emotion earlier, just watching the recent rise. Over the last 2 weeks, we've just seen crypto go up every day. And every day it goes up, it's like, I wish I would have bought some. I wish I would have bought some. But that's only one part of the emotion. What I think is entirely stupid, and I've thought this from the beginning, I've never quite understood it, other than the fact from the front runners' point of view, are these armies. Can you talk about crypto armies and what exactly are they doing? What do crypto army? What is the purpose that they serve? Especially if you're in that group, like what are you doing?
Yeah, I've had some people get mad at me about my opinions about this. I won't name any communities or armies in particular, to not piss people off. But in my opinion, right, I could be wrong. This is just the way I see the world. In my opinion, certain people don't want people, us to get rich. And so what they do is they've created certain protocols, certain tokens, certain communities, and promoted them to everybody. So if someone's new to crypto and they get in, they immediately, the algorithms, the YouTubes, the Twitters, they siphon everybody to certain spots within this industry. And those spots are meant to, keep you in assets that are not going to rise very much, you know? And so that's a quote unquote conspiracy theory, but that's what I see. And whether that's, intentional or just, the way things have shaken out. But I think people are pretty easily manipulated via emotions, and you show them a couple partnerships and you show them a bank and you show them this, and you just keep them hooked with constant, dopamine. And then you build a community around that. People just get hooked, you see it in politics, you see it in sports. People pick their team and then they just get emotionally attached to it. And what I always say is, these cryptos don't love you. You should not love these cryptos, because
we see it everywhere. It makes no sense. And I want someone who I've actually tweeted about is Michael Saylor, and he has this irrational fixation with compiling Bitcoin, which I have no problem with stacking Bitcoin. But what I don't understand is why you would only stack Bitcoin, why you wouldn't have anything else, especially when you look at the difference in utility with Bitcoin and every other coin out there. But you have these people that, like, you look at Bitcoin maximalists and they're just saying buy Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin. And it's like, I mean, I get having a position in Bitcoin. It's not irrational to buy Bitcoin and want Bitcoin, but to have Bitcoin at the exclusion of every other coin or token does not make any logical sense. Like, it's overexposure, and in that point, you're just trying to make a point to be personally right. And Saylor is the epitome of that. And when we look at armies, so there's the Bitcoin, right? There's a Bitcoin army, and they call themselves maximalists, so it sounds better. It's not an army. And we've got a meme coin army with Shiba Inu. Looking at that is, I think, you're looking at peak. I don't know what to call it. Peak emotion, peak delusion, where it's just like, we are about this and everything. Like, if there's any good news, if Elon Musk does anything, then they're sharing that and retweeting it. But really, all it comes down to me, from what I see, is they just want the price to go up so that they're worth more. That's all the army really is. Is that what it comes down to?
Yeah, I mean, I think people, most people are kind of sheepish, in my opinion. They're followers, right? So they see a bunch of people talking about something, so they think that must be good. And the thing that nobody's talking about, that must be bad, right? Most people aren't putting in more than a few hours of research, if even that. They'll just see celebrities or big people, a bunch of people talking about something, and that's as far as their research goes. And I think it's designed that way.
So, highly emotional environment. We've got SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried. We've got FTX. We've got that's polarizing, right? The stories are polarizing. But that really, to me, that isn't important. Can you put SBF and FTX into context for the big picture of crypto? Like, for anybody that's like a passerby, they know about SBF, they know about the recent tanking of crypto, but what does SBF mean in the grand scheme of things?
Man, well, I would think, I just got to give my opinion, no matter how people feel. In my opinion, it was planned out to go down this way. They propped this guy up with the intention of taking him down at a strategic time to serve multiple purposes. The two most obvious purposes of the FTX collapse was, number one, to keep the average person out of crypto, to keep them afraid of it, thinking it's a scam, to further many of the other assumptions they've most likely already had. And number two, to bring in regulations.
And so that brings us back to a previous point. When those regulations come, is that when you see more money coming into crypto?
100%. I don't know if it'll be immediately, although I personally expect it to be very rapid, especially once America in particular gives the green light. I think I think everybody should have their plan for when that moment comes, because the institutions definitely do.
On the topic of regulation, XRP Ripple has been involved. I should say Ripple's token XRP they've been Ripple has been tangled up in litigation now for forever, right? They've just been mired in litigation. A lot of people, speaking of armies, the XRP army are sitting there and waiting on this resolution. What do you make of Ripple's situation? What do you make of Ripple in general?
Well, Ripple's a confusing one to me. When I first got into crypto, 2019, early 2020, the algorithms were feeding me the XRP Ripple rabbit hole, so to speak. And so I fell right into it. But within a couple months, I kept questioning why would I don't want to get into the details, but basically, why would the algorithm feed me, here's how to make $1 million and shove it down my throat? Because we know the world doesn't work that way, right? They were saying XRP is going to go to thousands of dollars, but usually to make that type of money, you got to do a little more work than just type in crypto on YouTube and the first thing that pops up, you know? And so I had XRP. It went up a decent amount, 100%. And then this lawsuit came out, and I was fortunate enough to get wind of it within 5 minutes of when it happened. I immediately sold everything, and it went down. And the timing of this was right before the bull run started. And so what they did was they had all these investors come into XRP thinking it's the big thing, and then start a lawsuit right before the bull run. So now all these people are trapped in this asset and missing out on all the gains of everything else. And the timing of it was just perfect. And XRP, but they kept people trapped in it, with this storyline of the SEC and blah, 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 blah. So in my opinion, a lot of people are trapped in XRP because they think it's going to change the world and be the world reserve currency. And that lawsuit in particular has been going on for 2 years. And I do think it's going to be used to be part of the green light of regulations. So that is something I have my eye on. I do think XRP will win and the asset will go up. And that will be a big moment for the whole industry as a whole and bringing us to that next level.
So with that, let's start winding down, and let's do that by talking about what are some things that you see in 2023, and maybe some of your more standard predictions along with something that is more contrarian.
Okay, interesting. So I think a standard prediction would be Bitcoin bottoms out in roughly in the middle of the year, right around when regulations come out. In that industry in particular, that's the bottom, and it starts a bull run, or it starts ascending from there slowly, relatively slowly. And the whole economy as a whole, I see also bottoming out in the middle of the year. But I don't think the stock market in particular will make new all-time highs for many years to come. And kind of a contrarian perspective to that would be, although all markets will crash, AI in particular within the blockchain space is going to continue to boom, and people are going to be sad that they missed out on that, because when everything else is going down and you're in an asset that's going up, it has a compounding effect on what you're able to do in the markets.
Very true. And I think so someone might be wondering, why is AI just so magical? And you just have to wrap your mind around how much value that AI can produce. And it's just endlessly scales, right? It's just, there's really no cap to the value it produces. So that's why any projects centered around AI are just highly desirable. But what I'm hoping, right, just for my own portfolio's sake, is that we see even a pullback on AI. I'm hoping that everything takes a turn for the worse, and it's funny because every day I'm just sitting there hoping for red. I just hope for red every day. I don't want to buy into it right now because I feel like it's, even as low as it is, which it is low, like, right, crypto as a whole is low. I don't want to buy in any further right now because we could see things go much, much, much lower than they currently are. But for 2023, I think recession is the nice way to put it. I think we are going to see extreme problems and problems on the of the magnitude where crypto becomes secondary for so many different people because they won't even be thinking about crypto. The times will be harsh, and I think we will see a market pullback, and that's why I'm not currently getting into it. But I do, like, I ultimately, it is so palpable that all of the momentum is right now, it's just the energy is in crypto, but the noise is distorting that momentum, right? We hear a lot of news stories, we hear a lot of different things, and it makes us think, okay, well, maybe not, right? Maybe this is problematic for one reason or another. But I mean, to me, the more you read about crypto, and I think that's really what prevents people from knowing about what's happening, is they just don't look into it enough. They only look into the headlines. And if you only look into the headlines, it sounds like there are pros and cons, right? Like everything's pulling in. You can't quite decide what's right or what's wrong. And we've already seen, right, Bitcoin come down from this what was it, around $68,000, and it got to in the $15,000 range a few months ago. So with that, you might think, oh, too risky. But what ends up happening with crypto? The energy just keeps coming back to it, right? Ever since it's come out, we've seen it ebb and flow, but what ultimately happens is people come right back to it. So I do think ultimately, once this crash happens, once it marinates for however long, probably at least a year, we'll end up seeing that surge. But like you said, different sectors could be affected at different times. So hard to see. But Andrew, thank you so much for coming on. Any last words?
I would say, yeah, just keep your eyes on crypto, keep your eyes on AI, start studying the fourth industrial revolution. Don't just type things in on Google and read the first articles you see. You got to dig deeper. And yeah, that's it, guys. Yeah.
Andrew is the analyst. I will have links to his social media, his website below, and we will talk next time.
Brown, thanks for having me on.
Thanks.